My name is Valeria, 32 years old. That evening, when I set foot again in the old house on the outskirts of San Diego, every step felt heavier than the long walk from the bus stop to the front door. The two-story house with its red tile roof, where I had grown up, glowed with warm yellow lights and rang with laughter. The half-closed door let out the smell of roasted chicken and wine drifting through the air. But what I felt wasn't the warmth of family, it was the coldness that had settled for years. When I walked into the dining room, the chatter stopped for a brief moment, then carried on as if my arrival meant nothing. The long table covered with a white cloth, enough for 10 people, was already full. Only a small chair at the far end, shoved slightly aside, remained. No one bothered to pull it out for me. I dragged it myself, the screech against the wooden floor echoing unnaturally loud in the stiff silence. Marissa, my older sister, glanced at me from head to toe and smirked. "Still taking the bus, Valeria? When will you ever get your own car?" What sounded casual cut into me like glass. I didn't answer, just quietly laid the napkin on my lap. My father, Edward, sitting at the head of the table, kept his eyes on the meat on his plate without looking up. A single grunt escaped him, enough to show his annoyance at my presence. My mother, Caroline, turned her head for a moment and frowned. "Still wearing that old coat?" I gave a faint smile. "It's cashmere, Mom." "Oh, thrift store vintage?" She shot back quickly, dripping with sarcasm. A soft laugh rippled around the table except from me. The air grew heavy, like I had barged into a private celebration. Conversations carried on, but not one word toward me. Marissa animatedly talked about her new real estate office in Beverly Hills, bragging about celebrity clients and million-dollar contracts. My father nodded along, pride in his eyes. My mother chimed in about organizing a church fundraiser, raising over $25,000 to repair stained glass windows. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, all wrapped in a world I was never allowed to enter. I sat there quietly, my hands clenched beneath the table. The glances cast my way felt like I was some unwelcome shadow clinging to them. Then came the inevitable mocking question. "So how's everything, Valeria?" My mother asked, her voice light but sharp. "Still keeping that little project alive?" Before I could reply, Marissa cut in. "Or did they finally evict you from that tiny downtown apartment?" Soft laughter followed. I set my fork down and drew a deep breath. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. I lifted my glass of water, the cheap drink they always mocked me for, and took a sip. That night I hadn't come to argue. I hadn't come to win their words. I came to sit at the table that held my childhood, to see clearly the people who had always treated me as the leftover of this family. Marissa's eyes lingered on me, her crimson lips curling. "Valeria, you're like a ghost in this house. Nothing about you has changed." I set the glass down, letting the laughter swell around the table. Inside me, instead of humiliation, was a strange calm. All the glittering lights, the red wine, the proud laughter, only made it clearer. I didn't belong to this feast, and I didn't need their approval anymore. The laughter around the table still rang out as if every mocking word wasn't enough to shove me into the shadows. I sat still, watching the candle flicker, its golden glow cast across the faces of people I thought I knew by heart. The truth was, I never knew them. To them, I was only a joke to liven up dinner, and tonight was no different. Marissa swirled her wine glass, her voice sharp. "Do you know that in Beverly Hills even the worst apartment costs $500,000? You'll never set foot in that world." The table erupted in laughter again. I slowly reached for my napkin. As the fabric slid across my fingers, something glimmered beneath the cuff of my wool coat. My mother, Caroline, raising her glass, froze. Her eyes widened, stunned. "Valeria, what is that on your hand?" Her voice cracked, no longer sharp like before. I glanced down. The chandelier light struck a teardrop-shaped diamond, gleaming so brightly it drowned out the candles. The room fell silent. The ring was unlike any ordinary piece of jewelry. A rare cut, facets reflecting colors like shattered glass, and it fit my finger perfectly. My father, Edward, slammed his knife onto his plate, the metallic clang startling a few people. He stared, his face pale. "Valeria, where did you get that?" I turned the ring lightly, my finger brushing the cool diamond surface. I smiled, my voice calm. "Oh, just a gift I picked up on a day when no one remembered me." The words landed like a stone. All whispers, clinking silverware, laughter, vanished. Marissa blinked rapidly, her lips trembling. She was used to controlling conversations, but now no words came. My mother tried to steady herself, but her voice shook. That can't be real. Would you like to touch it? I held out my hand, the diamond sparkling right before her eyes. Caroline pulled back, fear flickering in her eyes. He knew. Her eyes had followed countless auctions and charity galas. No one in the room doubted its worth. Edward rose, his voice heavy. Valeria, what are you hiding? I looked straight at him, steady. I'm not hiding anything. Not everyone who stays silent is poor or useless, no matter what you think. A thick silence fell. I heard the ticking clock on the wall, each second stretched like a taut string. Marissa drew in a breath, then burst into shrill laughter. You're such an actress. Do you think wearing a fake trinket will make us believe you're wealthy? I met her eyes, the diamond's reflection lighting her painted face. She instinctively stepped back. I don't need anyone to believe me, I whispered. The truth shines no matter how much you laugh. No one touched their food. The roasted chicken, the mashed potatoes, all steamed but untouched. I saw it clearly in their eyes, not curiosity but fear. Fear that the years of contempt and cruel words were about to collapse onto them. I let out a quiet laugh, running my finger over the ring. I didn't come here to talk about jewelry. I rose, my chair scraping the floor with a chilling screech. Every eye locked on me. I turned toward the empty chair at the end of the table, the one that used to be my grandmother Liza's. It sat bare, no cushion, no plate, just worn wood. Him for her. No one spoke. Marissa's hand shook as she gripped her glass. Caroline turned away, refusing my gaze. Edward stood frozen, his face ashen. In that moment I knew, this ring didn't just shock them. It awakened a truth they had buried deep. I still stood there, my eyes fixed on the empty chair at the end of the table, the one that once held my grandmother Liza. The room glowed with light, but inside me everything dimmed, pulling me back to her final days, days I could never forget. She was 78 then, frail, her hair completely white, but her eyes still bright, still looking at me with a gentleness I had never seen from my parents. In her small downstairs room, the scent of antibiotics mixed with chamomile tea. She often sat curled in her faded floral armchair, her trembling hands holding knitting needles. Unfinished shawls lay scattered across the table. I remembered one winter night in San Diego when the temperature dropped suddenly. My parents and Marissa were out at a tennis club party. I came home after a long shift at the cafe, exhausted and chilled to the bone. But walking in, I found Grandma sitting alone at the dining table, her soup bowl cold and untouched. No one had bothered to warm it for her. Valeria, you're home? She looked up, lips trembling, her weak voice lighting up as if she had seen a flame. I hurried to set my bag down, turned on the stove and reheated the chicken soup. Steam rose, fogging my glasses. My hands shook from 10 hours of work, but I still spooned it carefully, blowing gently before feeding her. She smiled softly, her thin hand resting on mine. You're my little hawk, quiet but always watching. I smiled back, though my throat tightened. Grandma, I'm just doing what anyone should do. She shook her head, her eyes distant. Oh, Valeria. In this house only you have never turned away. That night I stayed by her side until she slept. The warm lamp light fell across her wrinkled face, lines etched with a lifetime of sacrifice. I knew she had never truly been loved in the home she had built. Another time, on a June afternoon, I wheeled her out to the porch where she loved to watch the lavender blooming in clay pots. Her hands were too weak to hold the watering can, so I placed my hand under hers, guiding the water gently over each purple stem. She whispered, "One day you won't bow your head anymore. They'll have to look up to see you." I laughed then, thinking it was just comfort. But when her frail fingers squeezed mine with surprising firmness, I knew she meant it. Once, Marissa passed by while I fanned Grandma during a sweltering evening. She smirked. Such a waste of time. Serving an old woman who's no use to anyone. Grandma looked straight at her, her voice hoarse but steady. More useful than someone who only knows how to show off at dinner tables. Marissa flushed red and stormed away. I lowered my head, hiding a smile. In that moment I realized Grandma was still the only fortress standing by me. In her final days, illness wore her down. I rushed home from work whenever I could, to make tea, to help her move, to read aloud from old books. One evening she clutched my wrist and whispered, When I'm gone, keep this. It will protect you. She handed me a small wooden box, carved with the initials LB. I trembled, holding it, too afraid to open it right away. She only smiled, closed her eyes, certain that one day I would understand. When she passed, I was the only one by her side. The house was silent. My parents were busy on calls about dividing assets, and Marissa didn't even make it back in time. I closed her eyes, the same eyes that had always looked at me with faith no one else had given me. Back in the present, in the middle of that dinner filled with hollow laughter, the memory struck my heart like a blade. I laid my hand gently over the diamond ring, feeling as if her hand was still there, holding mine once more. I'm here for her, I repeated, my voice low but firm. The family froze. Marissa swallowed hard, Edward gripped the armrest, Caroline stared down at her plate as if hiding. They knew too well. Mentioning Grandma meant awakening the very ghost they had tried to bury. But I was different. I would not let her memory be erased. I stood tall, my eyes locked on the empty chair, and in that moment, I almost saw her silhouette, gentle smile, eyes blazing with trust. After firmly invoking Grandma Liza's name, I sat down, but I couldn't swallow another bite. The air at the table cracked apart, so silent I could hear the wall clock ticking. Marissa lowered her gaze, tapping her finger against her wine glass, while my mother busied herself with rearranging napkins. I could see they wanted to change the subject, to bury Liza's name right there at the dinner table. But my heart urged me forward. I couldn't sit still. I rose and stepped away. The sound of my heels against the wooden floor made everyone freeze for a moment. I walked down the hallway, the very place once lined with family photos and Grandma's keepsakes. As a child, every day after school I would stop in front of a photo of her in a knitted dress, holding me tight on the backyard swing. Just looking at it made me feel I belonged. But now the wall was disturbingly bare. In the spot where her photo once hung were glossy shots of Marissa in evening gowns, smiling wide at her real estate firm's grand opening. Beside it was my father, Edward, hoisting a shiny golf trophy. My mother, Caroline, posed next to the mayor at a charity gala, holding up a donation check. All polished faces, all flashing cameras, but nothing familiar remained. I stopped, my fingers brushing a faded frame engraved. The Shaw family, built on legacy. Legacy. My lips tightened. Where was Grandma's legacy? The lace doilies she crocheted, the black and white pictures in her rose garden, the antique clock she once hung in this hall, gone as if they had never existed. I turned and saw Marissa standing behind me, arms crossed, her tone flat, baiting. See, Valeria? We've changed things so this house matches its new image. No one wants old junk cluttering it up. I stared straight at her. That old junk is history, blood and bone. Not some cheap trinket to throw away. Marissa gave a short laugh, her eyes flicking down to the ring on my hand. And what do you know about value? You've spent your life drowning in small things. I didn't answer. I stepped further into the living room. Where Grandma's wooden cabinet once stood, packed with her knitted shawls, now stood a glass case full of Marissa's trophies and certificates. On the coffee table, instead of the lavender vase Grandma loved, sat a billboard-size photo of Marissa posing beside a row of luxury mansions. I drew in a hard breath, anger burning slow. They hadn't just forgotten her. They had erased her, replacing her with their vanity. My father emerged from the dining room, his voice raspy but stern. Valeria, don't make this bigger than it is. Those things were just old memories. No need to keep them. I turned, my eyes like ice. No need? She was the one who held this house together while you all chased parties, the only one who cared for me. And now you bury her like trash. Edward's brow furrowed. No words came. Caroline appeared behind him, her eyes avoiding mine, but her voice clipped. Enough, Valeria. Everyone remembers in their own way. You don't have the right to judge. I stepped closer, lowering my voice but making it sharp. No, Mom. I do. Because I was the only one there at the very end. Not anyone else in this house. The hallway fell into silence. Marissa shifted uneasily, my father ground his teeth, my mother clutched her pearl necklace tight. I knew my words had sliced through the polished facade they worked so hard to build. I turned once more to the stripped wall. It felt like standing in a counterfeit museum, where every display was designed to polish their names while truth was erased. I touched the spot where Grandma's photo once hung and whispered inside, Grandma, they can erase the pictures but they can't erase you from me. A resolve flared in my mind. If they denied her, then I would bring her back, not with dusty frames on a wall, but with truths they couldn't bury. When I turned, my eyes met Caroline's. No longer mocking, her gaze trembled. She knew full well I wasn't stopping. The air in the hallway clung heavy like fog. The glossy frames flaunting Marissa and my parents' hollow triumphs seemed to sneer right at me. But I wasn't afraid anymore. My chest rose sharply, my hand tightened, and I decided it was time to reveal what I carried. I walked slowly toward the living room, where the ceiling light cast shifting shadows across the floor. Edward blocked my path, his voice raspy. "Valeria, what are you about to do?" I stopped in the center of the room, slipped my hand into my coat pocket. Every eye fixed on me, tension stretched like a string about to snap. I drew out a long brass key, old yet polished at the edges from being held so often. "Grandma Liza gave me this before she died," I said, steady and clear. "Along with a letter you'd rather not mention." Marissa frowned, stepping closer. "You're making this up. She never left you anything," she said clearly. I cut her off, raising the key into the light. "Can you look me in the eye and swear you've never seen this?" Marissa's face faltered. Caroline inhaled sharply, clutching the pearl strand at her neck. And Edward, for the first time that night, stepped back. From my pocket I pulled a worn brown envelope. On it, trembling but unmistakable handwriting read, "For Valeria and only her." I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "He trusted me. Not any of you." Caroline burst out, voice high. "No." That old woman was confused. "Those things, they mean nothing." I turned on her, my gaze sharp as a blade. "If they mean nothing, why are you trembling?" No answer. Only the clock ticking and their ragged breaths. I knew I had struck the fear they tried to bury. Marissa forced a laugh, trying to recover. "Suppose she did leave you a key. What does it even open? A dusty drawer? Some worthless box? Nothing that can change anything, Valeria." I stepped closer, holding her gaze unblinking. "But not tonight." Her mouth snapped shut. My certainty rattled her more than the key itself. Edward exhaled hard, trying to regain ground. "Whatever you think you have, don't forget this house, this estate, we built it. You have no right to stand here and lecture us." The cold brass pressed into my palm, steadying me. "You're wrong, Dad. From now on, no one can bury the truth." The silence burst, louder than a shout. I scanned the living room, where Grandma's armchair, lavender vase, and woven rug once were. All gone. But now I had proof to bring her back. Caroline spoke again, voice low but sharp. "If you dare use that against your family, don't blame me for what happens." I smiled faintly, the kind carved by years of scorn. "I'm not fighting anyone. I'm doing what Grandma wanted." They fell silent. Fear flashed in their eyes because they knew the key and letter weren't tricks. They could unravel everything they clung to. I slipped the envelope back into my coat, turned toward the staircase. My foot touched the first wooden step when I caught hurried whispers. Marissa and Caroline, trembling, unguarded. I stopped halfway, turned my head slowly and said, "You can erase her photos from the walls, you can hide every keepsake. But the key and the truth are in my hands. And when the time comes, I'll open everything." Then I turned and climbed. Each echo of my heels against the stairs struck like a hammer against the silence pressing down on the house. The next morning, I left the old house in San Diego before the sun had risen high. The pale sky was veiled in mist, the ocean breeze carrying its salty bite. In the pocket of my coat, the envelope Grandma Liza had left me felt hot, reminding me it was time to unlock the door they had fought to keep closed. I drove to a modest office building on Market Avenue. A faded wooden sign read, "Mitchell Green, Attorneys at Law." It was the address written in Grandma's old letter. I drew a deep breath before stepping inside. The reception area was bright but simple. Neat stacks of files covered the desk, the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Behind a large oak desk sat a silver-haired man in his 60s, round glasses sliding down his nose. He looked up at me, his eyes holding both surprise and recognition. "You're Valeria Shaw?" His voice warm, low. I nodded. "I came on my grandmother Liza's instructions." He stood, offering his hand. "I'm Harold Mitchell, attorney. Mrs. Liza left very clear instructions. If you appeared with the envelope and the key, we were to hand over what belongs to you." My heartbeat raced. I handed him the envelope and the brass key. Harold inspected both carefully, then nodded with satisfaction. He signaled his assistant, who brought in a dark wooden chest locked with an old latch. The key I carried fit perfectly, clicking open with a sharp snap. Inside was a thick stack of files and a large envelope sealed in red wax. Harold set them on the desk, sliding them toward me. "This is Mrs. Liza Bennett's final legal will, notarized and stored here." My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. The first line leapt at me. "I, Liza Bennett of sound mind, declare this my will, leaving all of my estate to my granddaughter Valeria Shaw." My breath caught. My fingers gripped the page tight as if to anchor myself. Harold continued gently. "The will covers the San Diego house, 15 acres of land in Montana, and bank accounts totaling more than $4.8 million. All in your name. No conditions, no sharing with the rest of the family." Each word struck me like thunder. Had Grandma truly trusted me this much? I flipped through the files. Property deeds, land titles, bank statements. Each number was a blade cutting through the years of contempt I had endured. I remembered Marissa's smug bragging, Caroline's scornful eyes, Edward's heavy growl. They had no idea everything they coveted now belonged to me. Harold's voice was steady. "She prepared thoroughly. She knew there might be disputes. Every document is notarized and copies are stored in 3 separate places. No one can contest this." I looked up, eyes bright. "So, no one can take this from me?" "Exactly," Harold confirmed. "The inheritance is entirely yours." I leaned back, exhaling. Relief and a quiet surge of power filled me. At last, the years of being treated as the leftover had an answer. Harold pushed a smaller envelope toward me. "And this, a personal letter she wrote to you." I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was familiar, slightly slanted, shaky but clear. "Valeria, if you're reading this, it means you found the courage to walk through the darkness. You were the only one who stayed, the only one who never turned away. I leave everything to you, not for revenge, but so you know love and sacrifice are never wasted. Protect what is rightfully yours. Remember, justice may be silent, but one day it will roar." My eyes blurred, but my heart sharpened. I folded the letter, placing it safely in my coat pocket. Harold nodded at me. "You now have every piece of proof. But be ready, your family won't accept this quietly." I smiled faintly, clutching the files. "I've been silent long enough. Now they'll hear me." When I stepped out of the office, the noon sun blazed so brightly I had to squint. But in that light, I no longer felt like an outsider. I had truth, I had proof, and above all, I had Grandma behind me. And I swore Caroline, Edward, and Marissa would soon know exactly what justice feels like. 3 weeks after my meeting at Harold's law office, I finally stepped into the courtroom of the San Diego County Courthouse. The gray carpet stretched, long rows of dark wooden benches lined up neatly, the air thick with the scent of paper and old timber. I sat at the plaintiff's table, before me a stack of files, Grandma Liza's envelope and her legal will. My heart pounded, but my eyes were clear, steady, no longer wavering. Across the room, my parents, Edward and Caroline, sat beside my sister Marissa and their attorney. Caroline's face was weary, yet her eyes still carried defiance. Edward leaned back, feigning calm, but his fingers tapped restlessly against the table. Marissa clutched her leather purse, her lips trembling as though she was about to break. Judge Margaret Collins, a woman in her 60s with neatly tied gray hair, struck the gavel softly, her tone firm. "Court is now in session. We are here to examine the inheritance dispute of Mrs. Liza Bennett." Attorney Harold rose, placing the file on the podium. "Your Honor, this is the duly notarized will of Mrs. Liza Bennett. It confirms that her entire estate, including the San Diego house, the Montana land, and all bank accounts, was left solely to her granddaughter, Valeria Shaw." The opposing attorney, a salt-and-pepper-haired man, quickly objected. "Your Honor, the family contends this will is invalid. In her final days, Mrs. Bennett lacked sound mind and was easily manipulated." I stood, my voice calm but strong. If she lacked sound mind, how was she clear enough to write letters in her own hand, to sign notarized documents, and to secure copies in 3 separate locations? I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "And beyond that, I have evidence proving it was my own family who conspired to steal." I pressed play. Caroline's voice echoed through the courtroom. "We just need to submit the fake will." The Montana land alone can clear Marissa's debts. Don't let Valeria find out. Then Edward's voice, low and cutting. That girl means nothing in this family. Once it's done, push her out and it's settled. And finally Marissa's words, sharp and mocking. She's old, she doesn't know anything. As long as we split it, Valeria will never suspect. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Collins frowned, jotting notes. The opposing attorney paled, jumping to his feet to cut in. Your Honor, this recording, it may not. But the judge raised her hand firmly. Silence. The authenticity will be verified, but its content is serious enough to weigh heavily. I turned my eyes toward Caroline. For the first time she looked away. Edward's head dropped. Marissa burst into sobs. Harold continued. Furthermore, these are bank records showing unlawful transfers from Mrs. Bennett's accounts into one under Caroline Shaw's name, over $230,000 across 8 years. No authorization, no loan agreement. The judge struck the gavel hard, her tone sharp. Enough. The false will submitted is clearly fraudulent. The audio and financial records demonstrate deliberate intent to defraud. She looked directly at my family. The court declares the fraudulent will void. The legitimate will stands, granting the entire estate to Valeria Shaw. In addition, Edward and Caroline Shaw are ordered to repay all misappropriated funds with interest. Marissa Shaw is disqualified from inheritance. The sound of the gavel reverberated, the final blow ending their lies. My hands trembled slightly as I sat, but my heart stood firm as stone. All eyes turned to me. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the unwanted shadow. As I walked out into the midday sun, the light struck my face, the breeze tossing my hair. Caroline sat slumped on the courthouse steps, eyes red. Edward turned away in silence. Marissa sobbed, begging me to share a portion. But I walked on, never looking back. Grandma once told me, justice may be slow, but when it comes, it will thunder. And today I heard that thunder echoing in the very room they thought I would never dare to enter. I returned to Grandma's old house in San Diego after the court closed the inheritance case. No more shouting, no more scorn. Only me and the quiet of the familiar wooden walls. In my hand was the file confirming ownership, but what truly made my heart race was this thought. From now on, I could transform this place into a space Grandma Liza would smile upon. I spent the following week cleaning. The boastful portraits of Marissa and my parents came down, replaced with black and white photos of Grandma, sitting at her sewing machine, holding me as a child, laughing in her lavender garden. I rehung the old pendulum clock Caroline had hidden away in the attic, wiped it clean and let it tick again. Each swing brought back warmth from the past. Then I began preparing an exhibit to honor her. I rented a small room at the San Diego Community Center, a place neighbors who had known her could easily visit. I brought everything I had kept: scarves she knitted, handwritten holiday cards, a small leather notebook of her poems. I enlarged photos of her ladling soup for the homeless at church. On opening day, the late afternoon sun poured golden light through tall windows. The crowd wasn't large, but every face radiated warmth. An elderly woman recognized a purple scarf and tearfully recalled Grandma giving it to her one freezing night. A middle-aged man remembered how she quietly paid for his son's medicine years ago. I stood silent, listening, realizing her legacy was not in property or bank accounts but in the hearts she had touched. When everyone left, I stepped outside into the cool air. In my pocket was a small packet of tomato seeds, the same kind Grandma once planted. I decided to take them home. The next morning, sleeves rolled up, I walked into the overgrown backyard. Weeds had swallowed the garden, but I patiently cleared each patch, loosening the soil. The sun beat down, sweat soaking my collar, but I felt no fatigue. Every strike of the hoe felt like freeing the earth from time's dust. When the ground was ready, I opened the seed packet. Tiny, fragile seeds rested in my palm, light yet heavy with meaning. I whispered softly, "Grandma, I'm planting your dream again." One by one, I laid them in the soil, covering them gently, watering them with rainwater I had collected the night before. My hands were dirty, but my heart felt lighter than ever. That evening, I brewed chamomile tea, sat by the window, and gazed at the freshly tilled garden. Moonlight spilled over the earth, glinting on the diamond ring she had left me. I touched it, not as a trophy but as a reminder that true strength was never in carrots, but in daring to claim the truth. In the days that followed, I drafted papers to establish a small fund named Liza's Seeds. It would support abandoned seniors, provide meals and craft workshops, just as she once had. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but at least I had taken the first step. On a weekend morning, I returned to the garden. The first green shoots had broken through, trembling in the breeze. I bent down, eyes stinging with emotion. She once told me, "Every seed knows how to find the light." Now I understood, it wasn't just seeds. People did too. I had found my own light. I rose, drew in a deep breath and looked to the clear blue sky. In the drifting clouds I saw her smile. And I knew, this wasn't an ending. It was only the beginning. A beginning of peace, freedom, and the strength she had always planted in me. Valeria's story reflects a reality many people have faced in life. Being belittled by their own family, having their worth erased, even being exploited and stripped of their efforts. Yet just like Valeria, justice will eventually speak if we remain steadfast in defending the truth. Her grandmother's legacy was not only money or land, but the belief that love and sacrifice are never meaningless. In today's world, the lesson is clear. The greatest inheritance is the courage to rise, reclaim freedom, and build a new beginning. What do you think about Valeria's journey and the way she fought for justice against her own family? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and meaningful family stories.